Oh, it's backwards. Well, anyway, the name of the book is Albrecht Drue, Ghost Puncher, and I'm starting in the middle of chapter 1. You'll have to take it from me what happened before, which is they're heading up to, drunken mob is heading up to Cardinal Crest to burn down the suspected witch's house. Okay, let's see. They're giving the history of the witch finder, who is a bad man and 17th century, 18th century Massachusetts. The killing started before the new stockade could claim even a single victim. Even as the witchfinder called out one maleficent influence from the flock, another insinuated itself among the sheep. One after another, night after night, the elders and luminaries of Bitburg were found dead, or in one case, not quite dead, but in extreme need of a manner of care that would not be available for centuries. Those responsible for the welfare of the townsfolk, the very servants of God who had so bravely named the witches responsible for the evil in their midst, were being murdered by some unspeakable force. The only town father immune to the devil's scythe had been Lord Philip Hagenbotham, and the witchfinder now cursed himself for so easily believing his ruse. He remembered well the exchange when Goodman Lemire had brought him before the Lord of the Cardinal's Crest just days earlier. Pip, Goodman Ed had said to his lord with a familiarity that should have warned the witchfinder of Lord Higginbotham's true nature. No servant of God or true English noble would ever allow himself to be addressed in so casual a fashion by his lessers. It was positively American. In the days that followed, the witchfinder convinced himself that the comforts of Higginbotham's estate had woven some kind of spell over him, weakening his mind against satanic deception. The way Higginbotham lazed among plush pillows with that immodestly dressed wife of his, nibbling at fruit and sipping on wine while a half mongoloid played violin. The way the servants' backs, unbent by proper flogging, seemed to float about the grounds, unhindered by decorum. A dozen cats stalking the house, giving no heed at all to the presence of God's witch-killing sword. Pip, seems someone's going about doing murder to all the town fathers. Pip had only shaken his head and sat up, shirtless from his wife, and comforts all but glowering at his intruders. His chest was a topographical map of scars and burns, and the witchfinder was all but certain he even glimpsed a tattoo before the man had the decency to cover himself. Seems senseless murder's a catchy tune, wouldn't you say, Master Witchfinder? The hedonist lord had said, stirring with his haphazard nakedness the most vile arousals inside of him. I would not saith so, my lord, the witchfinder had said. I would saith the devil himself has come to defend his brides, and that all good men of God must rally to confront him before the evil engulfs this place with the very fires of hell itself. In retrospect, the witchfinder realized that Lord Higginbotham had derided him with Lucifer's tongue all along. For as long as he'd suffered the New World, he felt as if the very land mocked the anointed blade of the crown, and this colonist spoke with its voice. Well, you just keep on killing witches, good Master Witchfinder, Pip had said, and the devil will keep defending the damned, or quit, and the devil may just go where his business is more pressing. Pip had only drunk more wine straight from the bottle like a damnable common. Either way, fuck off and be about your own business as I go about mine. After that, smiling servants had seen him through the door and quickly through the gates. Halfway down the hill of halfway down the slope of Fall Follow, man, I lost track. halfway down the After that, smiling servants had seen them to the door and quickly through the gates. Halfway down the slope of Fall Follow, Goodman Lemire had turned to a seat inside the coach, chin scratching and uncertain to the witchfinder, and said, You think maybe Pip's gone and done all them murders? It's not like he's ever been the friendliest with the church, and what? What do you mean, Goodman? The witchfinder had said. Well, just last year, when the church stopped its almsgiving, citing lack of return on investment, old Pip done and had all the poor folks come up to the crest to work for him, like. And the time after that, he come back from Boston with a fancy schoolteacher, and the mayor had a run out for being a harlot. Pip punched him right in the face. Seemed he told the mayor to fuck off about his business, too, as what he just did to you. On this, the witchfinder prayed all through the night and the next, flagellating himself with the sacred scourge for guidance. On his 5th sleepless night of ergo-ridden, lager-induced prostration, he found himself overwhelmed by a vision of the casually profane Lord Higginbotham and his lusty wife. Together they writhed and licked and sucked, cast their eyes at him from afar, and called to him in ways that caused him to spill his very essence in thick, pearlescent puddles on his lap. It was so clear what had invited this great evil upon them. Lord Higginbotham had taken up the cause of the native devil and sought to scour all the good English from the New World. Fueled with holy certainty, the witchfinder gathered his sword and his faith, flew from his blood-spattered suite, and readied the surviving goodman to rain God's wrath upon this devil's henchman. It came to them as no surprise there in the rain-drenched courtyard of Cardinal's Crest, with the witchfinder on the precipice of delivering the fire that would purify the affliction gripping Bitburg, that his foe revealed himself. The minion of the beast stood there before the doors of his ancient and great house, arrayed in the splendor of the downpour and the finery of the rabid torchlight, a silk-sheathed blade of a man, both beautiful and terrible of countenance. Lord Philip Higginbotham emerged like a feather blown by careful winds, waving assurances to those behind him. Several of his servants had to restrain his young wife, but even staring down the mob and knowing its sole intent, the Lord of Cardinal's Crest betrayed no hint of fear. If anything, he looked annoyed, like a professor drugged from his studies to create undergraduate research papers. "Goodman Ed, the fuck's all this?" he said, striding across the mud to confront the leader of the mob. When the oaf inserted himself between the two, Pip cocked an eyebrow at him, as if to say, "Really, oaf?" And the big blacksmith sheepishly drew back. Pip cast a far less friendly glance at the witchfinder. "You'll come to burn me out of my home?" "Well, that's the kin of it, Pip," said Ed. "We're to raise this place and murder you up good, all in the name of the Lord and his appointed witchfinder. This Ponce? You've lost your fucking mind," Pip indicated the clergyman with as much disdain as he could convey. "Hang on, I gotta let the dog in." See, the thing is, the dog will be out in just like 2 minutes, right? The dog's like, go in, go out. Yeah, there's one person left. Okay, hello from India. Hi. What am I reading? I don't know if you're still there. I'm reading, it's backwards. It's Albrecht Drue, Ghost Puncher. I think it's in the description, but anyway, let's keep going here. By now the mob had grown less single-minded. They were wet, the beer was wearing off, and no one had shouted anything incendiary in two good minutes. They had torches and there was stuff to burn, but Lord Higginbotham didn't look like any kind of murder demon they'd ever heard about. The mob, indeed, was showing signs of becoming plural-minded. The witchfinder felt them slipping away, lost to the forked tongue and pleasing visage of the demon spawn that stood before him. Without prologue or further provocation, he drew his blade and howled, "In the name of God, I cast thee hence, foul demon." The snicker-snack of the witchfinder's sword carved a silver crescent in the night and a chasm in Pip's chest. A single chrome-bright scar of lightning mirrored the mortal furrow in the sky above. The arc of red spouting from the wound hung spotlit by the day-bright sky for the instant it took the blooded lord to crumble on the sodden turf. That instant saw Pip's wife fly to his side. All the movement and blood must have scared the oaf. Goodman Ed couldn't stop him from bringing that crushing maul right down on Lady Higginbotham's pretty head. Inside the great house, the servants shrieked. The witchfinder raised his sword again, brimming with orgasmic triumph. Splayed out in the mud from the shock of the witchfinder's slash, Pip tried to comprehend the meaning behind the warm corpse spasming in his lap. Indeed, it had once been a head, and he had loved that head, but the chest was burning and the madman was waving a bloody sword around him. And a host of soaking, unwashed peasants were gawking about his front lawn. "Burn it!" cried the witchfinder. "Let no stone stand. Burn it all in the name of God." That's all it took, really, for the purpose of the mob to weave itself back together and remember its purpose. All over the courtyard, set against the rising dirge of screaming servants and roaring townfolk, the flickering face of fire showed itself. All the conspicuous combustibles went up, one pyre after another, and soon the mob, its lust for violence whetted, turned from the burning to the beating. They set themselves on the Higginbotham's household, killing them in the name of jealousy or over old disputes or just out of the wildness that comes over a beast at the smell of blood. At the center of it all, the witchfinder gloated over the reeling At the center of it all, the witchfinder gloated over the reeling lord of the Cardinal's Crest. "A follower of Satan," he said, blood and rain dripping from his blade as he posed for the killing blow. "See you now the glory of heaven and the foulness of hell awaiting you." Pip did see. He saw the townfolk, over whom he'd been lord in name only, guiding but never ruling like priestly tyrants he abhorred, the people he'd helped in times of sickness and famine, the ones he'd sheltered from war, the men he'd raised houses with, all of them about the bleeding business of slaughtering his household and tearing down his house. In particular, he saw Goodman Lemire and Thistlewillow, men he'd hosted in his own home, as jubilous in their desecration as the rest. He saw men given over to their darkest lusts because they'd been offered an excuse by the witchfinder and the presented. He saw the witchfinder himself, strutting over the desecrated shell of his pretty little wife, and that alone would have been enough for Pip to remember why he'd let those men into his house when he should have burned them all on the hillside. He'd given them a chance, and all he could do was curse that part of him that had. Splayed out in the mud, his eyes never leaving those of the one who had cut him down, Pip smiled. Not an evil grin, nor the welcoming one, nor a hint of malice or benevolence about it. Still, it was a smile that chilled the witchfinder. "So I do," he said. The spongy ground beneath him shifted, and the witchfinder couldn't find himself upright without turning his blade away from his target. Pip stood, easing his wife's body, life streaming from it in the cold, oblivious rain, to the ground. "And do you, I wonder, see what your God has wrought here?" The witchfinder took in the sights and sounds of the massacre. In a moment of gasping clarity, he found himself struck by the muddy, killing field, and for once he had the decency to question what he saw. The fact that Pip looked ready to rip his throat out helped, but to his credit, the epiphany owed itself mostly just to what passed for conscience. He paused a moment, wondering if he still had one of those, or if that too had been left behind on the soggy thighs of the devil-wife succubus who'd stolen his godly virtue. The pause lasted long enough for Pip to collect himself a bit. From this vantage, the witchfinder was just a wet idiot wrapped too tightly in his own world. Pity and anger made fickle dance partners, finally abandoning him altogether as the tune shifted to one of pervasive disappointment. "I told you, just stop the killing," Pip said. "Stop the burnings, and the devil would leave." The fire in the braziers began to pulsate, slowly at first, but ever faster as Pip advanced on the witchfinder, still scrabbling in the mud. "But you didn't." The gash across his chest howled at him, but the death screams of his household ran louder. "You didn't stop, and thus the devil stayed amongst you." The witchfinder's footing left him altogether, and he splashed down at Pip's feet. Made mute for a moment by the grime splashed into his mouth, he stared blankly at the frightening serenity that had come over the Lord of Cardinal's Crest. "Well, he didn't really stay," Pip said casually, grimacing against the pain in his chest, each movement mingling more of his blood with the storm. He, like an artist before a canvas, drew with outstretched fingers on the surface of the air. Where he gestured, pale silver light stained the night, arcane glyphs painted on the fabric of reality. "But he did come back. He came back to give me a gift for dealing with the likes of you. Not just you, of course, but for every murdering, raping, horrible thing like you. I will kill you, and I will kill everyone like you, even if it means murdering the earth itself." The witchfinder scrambled backwards, desperate to keep his sword up. Transfixed by Lord Higginbotham, who was now glowing like the otherworldly runes hung in the air, Pip gave a last and fleeting look to his dead wife, the memory of her face forever replaced by the ragged stump that remained of it. "Now," said Pip, "burn." The pulsing fires that surrounded them exploded, a dozen pillars of flame blasting at once from the scattered braziers to a single nexus high above. All around, the bodies of the dead went up like kindling, the wetness of the night be damned. Their killers detonated in one bubonic explosion after another, bodies bursting with a rush of flash-fried meat and gore. Like ribbons winding round an unseen maypole, the columns of fire twisted and drew in from the braziers, converging high above the spot where Pip held the witchfinder's eyes in his. The witchfinder could hear hell calling him now, the unmistakable choirs of the damned louder even than the fire gathering above him. "Lord," he pleaded, realizing at last what he had done, or maybe just with the same desperation as any dying man, "forgive me my sins and let me serve you in death as I thought I served you in life. Let not this evil spread beyond this place." The swirling vortex boomed and blasted earthward, a lance of flame spiraling down on Pip and Witchfinder, consuming them both in a slurping swallow. A final exertion brought the Witchfinder's sword up through Pip's belly into his heart, and the Lord of Cardinal's Crest barely had time to register his own death before every trace of him was smote from existence. With a contented belch, the fire, a living thing in the place where life was no longer welcome, winked out. Not a single body remained as the evidence of that blasphemous slaughter that had occurred, not a single drop of blood, or anything that could burn. With the fire went the rain, those redacted, lustful lips having spoken enough. Only the bones and the viscera of the Cardinal's Crest remained, somehow untouched by spark and cinder. It's still there, actually, right there at the top of Fallfallow Hill, just to the edge of modern-day Bitburg. Many think it's strange that such a prime location has remained immune to development for all these years. Well, it's strange if you don't know what went down back in 1770-something. There have always been a few attempts at reclaiming the ground since then, but they've all failed, most of them in rather sanguine and spectacular fashion. Because of course they do. The people say the place is haunted, but even modern-day enthusiasts of the paranormal have yet to find a reason to get particularly close to the crest. And while you can see the defined old house from nearly everywhere in the city, most folks don't look back because they know, most folks don't look because they know something is looking back, and he's kind of a dick. Okay, that's chapter 1 of Albrecht Drue Ghost Puncher by a fellow named Paul Miller. I found this in the local library, the Fairview Park Little Free Library book box, which is an excellent little free library if you're ever in Philadelphia, in the Manayunk section. You come by and you find it. This has been a live read aloud. Thank you for all stopping by. If you liked it, subscribe, right? Press that subscribe button, mash the like button. That's what you're supposed to say, right? I don't do this for money. I do this for fun. And I'm not even having fun. But thanks for stopping by. I will continue with chapter 2 of Albrecht Drue Ghost Puncher, backwards, by Paul Miller, anon. Okay, thanks guys.